Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a video on traveling with celiac disease, or if you're gluten-free or have dietary requirements. We're not discriminating here. I'm gonna keep it super simple today, and I'm gonna give you 5 top tips. One of the tips has about 8 or 9 subsections, but 5 main top tips on how to travel effectively with celiac disease or a dietary requirement. So if you're a brand new fresh celiac, you might not even know that traveling can be an issue. I'm specifically talking to past self Morgan, who never really thinks beyond a week ahead. Traveling was actually my first big challenge with celiac disease, and it wasn't something that I was at all prepared for. I've talked about this specific situation before, but I was only diagnosed a couple of weeks before I moved to the UK from New Zealand. When I was diagnosed, one of the first things I did was ring up the airline and ask them to change my meal to a gluten-free meal. They were like, that's okay. And I was like, great, should be sweet. Oh no. See, past Morgan didn't know that you have to prepare for when things that you think are gonna happen don't happen food-wise. So unfortunately, I had 2 12-hour plane rides with absolutely no plane meals. I did not bring snacks, and I was pretty freaking hangry by the time I got to London. I'll tell you that. So that's why I'm making this video, because I want people to avoid that situation. And I know no matter how long it's been since your diagnosis, traveling is still one of those things that people feel very anxious about. So let's get into the 5 tips. Number 1, pack snacks. Okay? Pack loads of them. Pack as many as you want with the bag space that you have. I recently just came back from karate camp. It was a weekend trip and there was no shops, no Wi-Fi, and I was told that I was going to be catered for. And of course my little celiac brain was like, well, okay, but what if something goes wrong? What if they can't provide me with gluten-free food? So for that specific situation, I packed a entire backpack full of snacks, because I thought if I can't eat any food, breakfast, lunch and dinner, I'm not going to be able to train. Luckily, I actually ended up bringing loads back. This is actually some of the stuff I brought back. Depending on where you're traveling to, you might not need to bring as much as I did last weekend. If you know you're going somewhere that is in a city, that you'll have access to a supermarket, you don't need to bring as many snacks. In terms of snacks though, my top tips for bringing snacks are make sure they are delicious. Okay, that's rule number 1. Make sure they are something that you want to eat. Okay, I cannot stress this enough. There is nothing worse than eating a sad little muesli bar while everyone around you's eating pizza, okay? Bring stuff you actually like. Secondly, pack things that are quite dense and compact that you can bring a lot of. This is like a flapjack bar that I have here in the UK. It's one of my favorites. Very oaty, very sweet, delicious and filling. So firstly, make sure it's delicious. Then make sure it's nice and compact and dense and is going to fill you up. Obviously not everything you bring has to be like this. I've also got these crispy marshmallow bars, and these are more of a just because I like to enjoy them rather than something that's going to extremely fill me up. I've also got cake bars here, so what am I saying? Something else you might want to think of is bringing snacks for the plane. Past Morgan, that would have been good. Most airlines, of course, offer gluten-free meals, but it's always good to have something just in case that goes wrong. Depending on where you're flying, you might be able to bring your own packed sandwiches or salads. If you're going somewhere that's not going to allow you to bring that much food through security, I'd go for more closed, compact things like muesli bars and shit. Tip number 2, book a place with a kitchen. This isn't something that you have to do, but it does make eating some meals a lot easier. It also might save you a bit of money from not eating out every night. Having your own kitchen at a place can give yourself a little bit of comfort and a little bit of control that you might feel like you're lacking when you're overseas. Depending where you are, the only thing I'd probably always stay away from is the toaster, just because you don't know how clean it is, or you don't know what's been in it last, and you don't want to get any crumbs on your bread, etc, etc. The other side to this is booking a hotel or resort that can cater for gluten-free people, and yes, there is a lot of those around, but we'll talk about that in step 3, which is do your research. I know some people hate researching and doing planning, but I love this part, specifically because I'm finding out exactly where I'm going to eat and what delicious things I will be trying while I'm overseas. So I've got a few sub tips under this one. Number 1, follow gluten-free people that are local to the area. Obviously, this isn't going to always be successful. Some places just don't have maybe a gluten-free influencer. I know, crazy. But a lot of places do. And a lot of them will be pretty willing to help you as well find safe places to eat. And just going a step further than a travel guide, local people are also going to know the best places to eat because they've probably tried everything that they can and will give you good tips. Number 2, the second place I find that is really ripe with information is Facebook groups. Now, I don't tend to love Facebook groups for everything just because it's sometimes a bit of a overwhelming amount of information, but just connecting with one a couple of weeks before you go somewhere and then searching in their little search bar, because every group has like a search bar, putting exactly the terms that you want to find out about into that search bar will bring you up quite a lot of information. My 4th tip, travel guides. There are loads of them. The ones I tend to look at quite often are Jodie's, the Legal Nomads blog, and Laura's My Gluten Free Guide. And I love these because they've both got very high standards about what is gluten-free and what isn't, and both incredibly informative. So I will link them both below. I would say Laura's one, she's probably almost at this point got every city in Europe covered. And Jodie's one, she has a lot more abroad places as well. She also has other people contributing to her blog because at the moment she can't travel, and so always regularly updated. I'm also going to throw in Rebecca, specifically for Edinburgh. If you're going to Edinburgh, you need to go to Gluten Interrupted's page or blog. She has got that covered, okay? Travel cards is another one, and you can find these on a lot of places. Actually, Legal Nomads blog has a lot of travel cards. By travel cards, they're probably called a different name, but you know, the little translation cards that explain your dietary requirements in another language. I think these can be 100% a godsend, because while you might be able to learn a few phrases like senza gluten or sin glutini, I think I got that wrong, having a travel card that completely explains what cross-contamination is, what specifically you can't eat, is very good. You can find a lot of these online. I'll pop some links below to places that you'll be able to find them. What am I up to? Subsection 5, 6, 4? The next one is read reviews of the places that you want to try out. And while TripAdvisor is kind of a little bit of a dinosaur here in London, at least, I think that it's super useful because you can search terms such as gluten-free, and people are exceedingly honest on there as well. Another place that you can read reviews is Find Me Gluten Free, the app. This is very useful. I think it will become more useful in the future when people are using it more, but people tend to rate basically their gluten-free experience, which is also very useful. Next subsection 7, I don't know. Research what grocery stores you're most likely to find gluten-free foods. Now, this is obviously can be out of necessity, but also fun, because who doesn't like trying new gluten-free products in a country that they're traveling to? Anyone? If you said yes, you probably have a better idea of fun than I do. So this information can also be found on travel guides and blogs and stuff, but just check out what supermarkets there are, what gluten-free brands there are, stuff like that. One of the last things I'd suggest researching before you go is researching about the Coeliac Foundation in the specific country you're going to. Now this can get a little bit tricky because sometimes they won't be in the language that you speak, but sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll be able to find out what their like cross-grain logo is, what their certification standards are, or even products and restaurants that they give the AOK to. So that might be something that's worth looking into. But yeah, that's research. Tip number 4, create a map of the places that you want to eat. This is my favorite thing, and depending on where you're traveling to, could take quite a while. It did for me going to Barcelona because there are so many places I could eat. Go on Google Maps, create a new map, and then just start logging in the places that you want to eat. Sometimes you don't even have to do this from scratch because people can share them. I think I might be able to share my Barcelona one as well, so I'll pop that in the link below if I figure out how to do that. Basically, I'll show you what I did with mine. I took them into 3 different categories. Bakeries, cafes, restaurants were my 3 categories of food places to eat. And then I also put in where I'm staying and the locations that I wanted to visit doing tourist stuff, and I color coded them. And this is something you can just download and have in your phone, and it makes things super simple. If you're like, gosh, I'm hungry and I don't know where the heck I am in this new city, bam, phone. Oh my gosh, I'm only 3 blocks away from a gluten-free bakery, let's go there. Also on the map, it gives you a little note box. You can write little notes in there. So I tended to just put when it was open, and what type of food it was. I actually prefer to do a map rather than an itinerary because it gives you just a tiny bit more freedom that perhaps we're lacking with all of this research. We'll talk about this more later on in the video, but I prefer doing a map and deciding when and where that I wanted to eat. Tip number 5. What was it? Oh yeah, tip number 5. Take the focus off food and plan things that aren't food related. Now this is super basic, but it's something that I personally tend to forget. I usually go on holidays very food minded, but do you know what? There's actually other things to do when you're on holiday other than eat. Who knew? Just remember there's a whole world of experiences you can have when you're overseas, and you know, at least half of them don't have anything to do with food. The other half has to do with wine. I'm just kidding. That is my 5 top tips, but we're not quite done. This week on Instagram, I asked you guys, what is something that holds you back from traveling as someone with dietary requirements? And I got a really good range of answers, so I just sort of wanted to go through the main ones that I got and perhaps, hopefully, offer some pearls of wisdom, or just nod and agree with you because I don't have any pearls of wisdom. But you know, it's nice to be heard and appreciated, am I right? So the most popular one that I got was definitely the language barrier. That is something that worries people because of the reasons I said before, not knowing how to quite effectively communicate your needs and your dietary requirements. Now that I'm thinking it, I actually forgot to put this tip in my 5 top tips. So bonus tip, learn a couple phrases of the language of the place that you're going to. It actually helps immensely because as long as you can just say, hey, I'm gluten-free, or gluten-free, no gluten, you'll at least be on the right track. I think even just having a couple of phrases up your sleeve, even if you've written them on your hand or your arm, to remember. Firstly, I think is super polite when you're in a different country. And secondly, just gives you that little bit of extra confidence that you know that they know what you're talking about. The second biggest thing that people said were holding them back from traveling is worried that they're going to get sick while on holiday, which is totally fair and totally valid. This is the whole reason why we're making this video, to avoid that situation. The only thing I can really suggest is not packing in your schedule too much, not having everything locked down, so just in case something happens, you've got a little bit of leeway to let your body rest, let your body heal. It's one of those things that you've got to weigh up and ask yourself, does the fear of getting sick or getting glutened while on holiday outweigh the possibility of how much fun and how many new experiences you'll have, how much new food you might be able to eat, the fact you might not even get sick at all? It's just one of those things that you've got to ask yourself, and whatever you decide, that's totally valid. The third one was being hungry with no food options, and in turn getting hangry. Yeah, but you know what? Bring snacks. Bring your snacks. Make sure your snacks are varied and make sure they're delicious. I know why I'm holding this one as an example. This is a cake bar from Sainsbury's. I don't love it. I don't love it. But here I am opening it and about to eat it anyway. Number 4, super valid, costing more. Because 1, you're buying gluten-free food. 2, you might have to pay more for an all-inclusive hotel or pay more for a place with a kitchen. 3, you might be paying more to constantly eat out at only gluten-free places. 100%. Unfortunately, I don't have a solution to this, but I can just nod in agreement that sometimes, yes, it is more expensive to be gluten-free, just like it is wherever you are, unfortunately. God, I wish it was cheaper. Number 5 is a really good one. The loss of spontaneity. Yeah, I totally know what you mean by that. All of this planning, all of this research, all this brain space it's taking up does tend to take the fun out of some things, doesn't it? Also, not being able to just see a restaurant and go, oh, what are those people having? I want that, and just wander on over. I only have one solution for this, and that is be spontaneous in your other choices that don't have anything to do with food. Be spontaneous in your experiences. And maybe that's something that you're not used to because maybe your spontaneousness revolves around food, which is totally understandable. But seeing if you can shift that and still getting that, oh my God, I'm just so free. I'm traveling, I'm free. Who am I? From experiences rather than food is the only way that I've been able to think about it. But I'd be interested to hear if anyone else has tips about this, because I don't think I've quite nailed this one down, so please leave your tips about being spontaneous as a celiac or a person with dietary requirements on holiday in the comments. Great. The next one is fantastic. Being a burden with the people you're traveling with. Yeah, I'm laughing because I can relate. Although I'm very lucky in the sense that most of my traveling has just been done with my partner James, who is very understanding and also loves food as much as I do and trusts in my opinion on where to eat. So we tend to be absolutely fine, but I do know that there are times where me sort of looking for the next place to eat can be a little bit annoying if you're just trying to explore a new city. In terms of not being a burden though, depends on who you're with. My next travel is luckily with my mum, who's also gluten free, so we're just gonna eat and not be burdens on anyone. But in terms of being a burden, it obviously depends on who you're with. I think maybe communicating your needs, communicating what you need to do to have a safe travel experience, the places that you need to eat, the places you want to eat at. I think that's fine. If you communicate that and have an understanding of that before the trip, that's going to be a lot easier for the both of you or for all of you. But it's hard. It's hard to have the confidence just to say like, this is what I need and stick with it and not feel guilty about it. It's hard. It comes with time. But hey, you're not a burden. The last thing that people mention that holds them back from traveling is that planning is exhausting. Fair enough. You could have just heard all my tips and been like, oh, I don't want to do any of that. Oh. But there is people who have tried to do a majority of the planning for you, and that comes in the form of guides, that comes in the form of Google Maps. Something that I'm going to keep doing is making Google Maps for the cities that I visit, and if I can make that public to you guys, I absolutely will. Can't believe I didn't mention this. Georgia, the GFG, has an amazing map of London and all of the places that you can eat. It's fantastic. So there are people who are trying to do the work for you. You've just got to take advantage of that. But there's also just the tiniest wee pinch of you've got an autoimmune disease or a dietary requirement. And unfortunately, that means life just takes tiniest little bit more planning. Okay, that is the end of my video. If you think I've missed out on any tips, please put them in the comments so other people can read them as well. I promise I'll keep researching places to eat overseas and hopefully those guides will be useful to you. I know I said in my Japan video that I was going to make a Japanese itinerary. Look, that may have been 6 or 7 months ago. I'm still going to do that, I promise, if of course that's useful to you guys. But otherwise, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Woo! And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!